Hey guys, Dilby here. Welcome back to the channel. So today what we're going to do is take a deep dive into the world of shakers, a masterclass if you like. So I love shakers, I love tambourines. They're in pretty much all of my tracks. I'd say all of my tracks, including the one you can hear playing right now. There's a link in the description to Beatport and Spotify if you want to go check it out. I think shakers are pretty important in most kind of modern dance music, whether it's like house, disco, indie dance, melodic house and techno, progressive, everything really. You know, I think they add a lot of character, a lot of humanization, but speaking to a bunch of people, I kind of get the feeling that it can be something that's a bit confusing. And if you're not going about things in the right way and taking the right steps, they can kind of sound robotic and add like the opposite feel of what we want from shakers. Anyway, that maybe sounds a little bit confusing, so let's just get into it, all right? As always, you can download the project files for this video, link in the description to Patreon. It's a great way to support the channel. Now let's jump into Ableton and see how this thing goes down. Alright guys, so here we are inside Ableton, and this is a little beat that I've put together to demonstrate how we can build up some shakers in a kind of professional way. Now we'll listen to the beat and you'll probably notice that it sounds a little bit empty, right? It's cool groove, it's kind of a deep progressive-ish type thing, but there's definitely something missing. Right, we need some more action and some more interest in the high end for sure. And for this type of music, and actually like most types of music or modern dance music, some shakers is gonna really lift things up. So I've prepared here a drum rack and I've just put in one shaker to start with. Now what I'm using is the Deep Premium Volume 6 from Production Music Live, but that's just what I've chosen for this. You can use any shaker library that you want, right? So first thing we're going to do is get some samples. And when I'm choosing samples here, I want to find like samples that contrast with one another. But we're just going to build it up one at a time. So I'll just go hot swap here and we're going to listen to some of these. So we'll just start with this one. This is what we've got here. Now, some samples are better than others. These ones are pretty good sounds, but as you can see, they kind of aren't chopped perfectly. So anyway, we're going to start with this and we'll see how we get on. Now for a shaker, what we're going to do basically is put in 16th notes. Okay, so that's going to sound like this. Okay, so that's okay, a little bit robotic. Now let's see if we can go through the hot swap and try some different sounds. I'll just turn this up a little bit. As you can probably notice, the sample selection has a big impact on the end result, on the sound that we're going to get. Now I want to start with something that's like a little bit brushy, like one of these ones at the start. Okay, let's just start with this first one. Now what I'll do is grab this, copy it over, and we can copy this one. Now I'll hot swap and find another one. So we want to look for contrasting samples. Something like that might be good. I'm going to open up the mixer on this drum rack because these samples are at very different volumes. Now let's see how that sounds. Cool. So what we're going to do, I'll just mute the second one, we'll go in. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is influence the velocity. So there's a number of different patterns that can be used, and I'll demonstrate some common ones. So obviously right now we're just playing 16th notes. They're all the same velocity, which makes the same volume. Now we can take these two 16th notes and pull them down. So that's a little bit more groovy. Now if we take this first hit down a little bit, that's going to emphasize the first one, have a bit quieter here, really emphasize this offbeat, and then a bit quieter here. So that sounds like what we think of when we're thinking of a shaker, right? But there's some other patterns that are quite commonly used. So let's move over here, and you can have an emphasis on the downbeat. So it's basically just the same thing, but in reverse. Cool. So that gives a different feel to this one. This one feels a little bit more aggressive. Now here's another one. If we go a little bit of emphasis on the downbeat, down, up, and then the highest one here. Right, this is a commonly used pattern in Afro house. So it's kind of like rising up in volume, and in a kind of variation of that, we can have the lowest down, highest down. So why don't I bring these over to the session view, and now we can make each of these into different clips. Okay, now we can audition them. So you can hear they all give slightly different feels and slightly different vibes. So my preferred is, especially for this type of style of music, is this first one here. So I'm just going to take this, duplicate it across, and then I'll copy it up to the other shaker and bring that back. Now let's go back to the arrangement view, and I'll unmute this shaker. So that's got a bit of groove, it's nice, but we can do more. So what I'm going to do is pan this one left and pan this one right. We'll do it hard panned, and then we can adjust it. So it sounds a bit crazy when it's hard panned, so let's bring it in. So that sounds pretty nice. I think what we want is another one going down the middle. Something like this. This is going to sound like almost like a closed hat type thing. So let's just try it on the offbeats. So now we've got like a bit more emphasis, and that's giving a bit more of a driving feel by emphasizing those offbeats. Now what we could also do is add in something like this. So now we're emphasizing the first measure and this third measure by having an extra hit in here. So that's sounding pretty good to me. Now in the mixer, I'm just going to bring this down in volume a little. Now we can hear some other things happening with our drums and things. So while we do want to be aware of the interaction, what I'm actually going to do is turn off some of this other stuff so that we're just really focusing on the shakers for this tutorial. Now we want to add a bit more detail, so what I'm going to do is add another layer. We'll see if there's a tambourine type sound. No. Okay, I'm going to go to a different pack, Native Instruments Machine, drums, metallic, and tambourine. Something like this could be interesting. Give it a try. Now you can see just by that sample it's very clipped, it's very loud. So I'm going to bring that down. It's quite long, but we'll give it a try. So what I want to do is emphasize this downbeat. I think it's a bit long, so we'll try and find a different sample by hot swapping and listening in context. Turn that up a bit. Something like that sounds good. And I'm just going to adjust the envelope to make it a little bit shorter. Now we could actually add in another tambourine layer. This is getting quite full. We're trying to really build up these shakers here. So let me go show in browser. Now you notice with these tambourines, some have got very hard attacks and some have got more of a shaker-like attack. So what we want is one that's a bit softer, a bit more like a shaker. Maybe something like this. And we can even add in a little bit of attack here. And again, I'm just going to make 16th notes. So why don't we try one of those other patterns. This time I might go for some emphasis on the downbeat. I can copy this and this, drop it down here, and bring this down a little bit. See how that sounds? I'm not too sure about that. Maybe I'll bring this one down a little bit as well. Okay, I like that. Now you'll notice here, we're emphasizing this downbeat here with this single sample. And then we've got this tambourine sample going along here. This one is a little bit louder, so it's emphasizing this downbeat. We could try something like duplicating this. So now we're really trying to kind of create some signature hooks in the tambourine. Now there's one of these shakers is not, I think it's the one that's on the right hand side. I'm not feeling like it's working as well as it could. So this one here. So I think something a bit softer. Maybe let's try that, but we'll have to affect the envelope here. So you can really shape the sounds using these envelopes and the starting point of the sample. Now let's mix that in. No, again, it's not right. So it's really important to just kind of go through in context and find sounds that work well together. So instantly to me that sounds much nicer. I'm just going to bring this in. So if we go back to our original two, really nice. So those two complement each other well. They're similar enough that they sound like they naturally go together, but they're differentiated enough that they don't just kind of have the effect of turning up the volume. Now our offbeat. Now our tambourine. Okay, so I think we want a different tambourine sound, and we're going to try and find that in context. That one's sounding nice to me. You see this tambourine here is very different to this first tambourine. So it's really important to find samples that complement each other, and those are generally sounds that have like different attacks, different timbres, just kind of sound different from one another. And I find it very difficult to tell whether things are going to complement each other just by listening to them in isolation. So I find it really, really important to use these solos and the hot swap, and just listen to samples, cycle through them, and listen to them in context. Now what we're going to do next is add some groove from this groove pool. So I'm using the MPC 16 Swing 57. So what that's doing is pulling these 16th notes off the grid. Now if I commit to that, you'll see it moves them slightly off this grid. Now what we're going to do next is go into the control section, and I'm going to use this randomize pan. I'm just going to bring it up a little bit to about 4 or 5. Then I right click and hit this copy value to siblings. So that's going to apply this to all of these simplers in this drum rack. Now they're all going to be moving around slightly randomly. Every time they play, it's going to be slightly offset to the left or right. Okay, that's great. Now what we can also do to further randomize it is use the add some random, which is a MIDI device preset from Ableton in this velocity device. And again, I'm just going to bring this down. I want it very subtle, somewhere around kind of 5, 7, 8. Let's just bring it to 0, and then I'll bring it in, and we can kind of hear once it sounds interesting. Nice, so this is starting to sound really good and starting to get like a bit of organic groove and vibe in there. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to duplicate this clip so we can add some variation in the next bar. So I'm just going to duplicate this tambourine. Cool, so that's starting to sound really good. We can kind of take this idea of details and go as far as we want with it. Let's find another shaker, something like that that's a bit more kind of unique and interesting, and let's put this in somewhere, maybe here. Now that I hear it in context, I don't know if it's the right sound, but I think it's going to, the placement is going to interact well with the rest of the loop. Maybe even something like that. Yeah, that can work. I'll just bring it down a little bit. Cool, and let's go for one more accent. We can give that a go. If it doesn't work, then we'll try using the hot swap. Okay, so I think I want one here, like when you have an open hat accentuated at the end of like a phrase, like a 2-bar phrase like this, and it gives this kind of sucking feeling. I think we can find a shaker sound that will give the same effect. It's almost there, but the tone isn't quite right, so let's try hot swapping it. These ones I am going to listen to individually because I want to try ones that are a bit longer because I'm looking for a specific effect. Let's try that. Okay, just way too loud, but let's give it a go. No, it's not quite right. Perfect. Now, I can hear it might be cool if we switch it up at the end of the 4th bar. So we duplicate that. Maybe I'll try doing that here. No. So what I'm going to do, I put a tambourine hit here, but I think it would be better if it was a different sound. So let's show in browser, and we'll try and find a tambourine that's a bit longer. Maybe that one. Now I'll go back to the MIDI. I'm just going to move that down to our new tambourine sound. So as you can see, it's just really like a matter of starting off simple and building up. So that's pretty cool. Let's turn these other elements back on. So now we've really got some kind of call and response happening in this shaker group that's like interacting really well with the other elements. And the shakers actually can become like a signature sound of the track. So without it, it's adding a lot of drive and a lot of character to the track. I'm just going to bring this string sound down a little bit. Now what we can also do is add in a little bit of glue compression. We've got fast transient, so I want to bring the attack right down, and I'm just going to bring this down to just kind of try and reduce the dynamics a little bit. Let's add a little bit of reverb onto this. So this reverb is just from my template. Link up here to my template. This is the preset. It's just using a preset from Verb Suite Classics, and I've just saved it as Dolby Drum Bus to remind myself if I ever need to find it again. Now, to take this one step further in the shakers, turn these off again, what we can do is add in an additional shaker loop. So what we're looking for in terms of a loop is not just to kind of create this rhythmic groove. We want to have something that sounds a lot more humanized. So I found one here. This is from a Production Music Live Shakers pack. And what I'm going to do is go show in browser, and I'm actually just going to grab, I don't know, a bunch of these, and we can bring them in and then audition them. And I'm going to bring the volume down because they look like they're... And what I'm looking for in a shaker loop here is something that's got a little more humanization. I think these shaker loops, I got them from the Production Music Live website, and they were about €5 or something on special, on sale. So this is the pack here. It's just some shaker loops, really good pack. It's €12 full price. They've got a 50% off sale on at the moment, so I can totally recommend this one. All right, so let's just audition some of these. Bring it down in volume a bit. So again, we're looking for contrast. There's this nice kind of egg shaker one. I've got this a bit louder because we want to hear them, but when I mix it in, I would actually bring it right into the background. So we're just adding some kind of texture here. This one sounds pretty nice actually, so I'm just going to color that. That could be interesting. Now that's the kind of thing I was thinking about. So you can hear these are live recordings, right? That's also nice. Okay, so we're going to have to decide here what we're going to use. Listen to them individually. So what I might do is try this one. I'm going to hit Command A to select all, Command U to quantize it, and then I'm going to apply the same groove template. Very nice. Now I will add a new audio track and I'm going to copy over our short list of shakers and maybe find one more loop. So now we've got this really incredibly detailed and interesting shaker loop. Let's group that, and I'm just going to copy over this glue compressor. I'll take this and add it to this group. Oh, glue compressor onto the group. Now let's pan these a little bit. Very, very nice. Now if we want to bring everything together a little bit more, there's a couple of things we could try. We'll try an erosion and a saturator with this warm-up highs. So first the erosion, I like to try this wide noise. I'm going to add a bit more width. And what this is doing is basically just adding noise at specific frequencies, and you'll see it fills out the body of the sound a little bit. So we want to use it subtly. So it's very subtle, but it just kind of brings everything together a little bit. Or we could also try some saturation. So we're going to add a bit more drive, and we'll correspondingly bring down the output. The combination of those two sounds quite cool. Let's check it with our processing on and off. Group those, Command G, turn it off. So it just makes those shakers kind of feel a little bit more like one unit. Now I'm going to go in here and adjust this downbeat tambourine. Probably a good idea to name all of these, especially if you're getting this much detail. But it's this one, I believe. I'm just going to bring this down by 2 dB, I think. So I want it to emphasize the points where it's playing, but I don't want it to kind of overpower the rest of the loop. Okay, so this is what we've got. So let's hear our loop before the shakers. Very nice. So that's adding so much more kind of detail, character, and energy to the track. I'm very happy with that. If you want to download this project file, you can do so from Patreon. There's a link in the description to go and grab that. There's this file and so many more over there on Patreon. I really appreciate your support on Patreon. It's an amazing community that we've built up there, and it's the best way that you can support the channel and make sure I keep bringing you these videos. Alright guys, there you go. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know in the comments who's got the best shakers in the game. And if you're looking for a video to watch next, then check out this one. I think you're going to like it. That's it from me today. We'll catch you next time. Peace.